Hello, I'm Aya, a PhD candidate in TU Delft. I will talk to you about the resilience of active residents in Cairo who build on their capacities and social connections to withstand poor governance and weak formal institutions while maintaining and improving their neighborhoods. To give some context, many countries in the MENA region share a history of colonization as well as authoritarian post-dependency regimes. The resultant political histories, institutions, and culture disable active residents from engaging in urban governance and management. For instance, the culture of establishing grassroots associations, such as neighborhood organizations or residents' union, is not familiar in Cairo. This is especially as civil society is delimited and monitored by state security system. Besides the internal organizational challenges and resources needed for such associations. Focusing on Cairo's neighborhoods, they suffer from urban deterioration, mainly in the services managed on the local scale, such as road maintenance, street lighting, garbage collection, environment improvement, and buildings and public spaces violations. This results in residents' frustration with the ineffective performance of local authorities in managing these services due to corruption, centralization, and lack of resources and capacities. Despite this context of hardship, active resident groups grow in Cairo, especially after 2011 uprisings. They attempt to improve, maintain, and beautify the public spaces and streets of their neighborhoods. By observing the platforms of selected active resident groups in Cairo, I will highlight the resilient tactics and solutions adopted by them. These tactics are analyzed using 4 lenses: the level of right-based expression, the level of collaboration with authorities, the level of recognition of the active group, and finally, the level of confrontation with authorities. Looking at right-based expression, the discussions on the platforms of the selected groups show that many residents are aware of their right to a certain quality of life in their neighborhoods as good citizens and taxpayers. Such belief may imply that the residents will demand the urban improvement from local authorities as a right through voice actions, such as media campaigns, signing petitions, and public meetings. This is true in some groups. For instance, New Nuzha residents mobilized the local authorities to facilitate the construction of a pedestrian bridge to minimize road crossing accidents. Al-Suwaisri and Abbasiyya active residents frequently push the local authorities to collect garbage and clean the local streets. However, other groups want to simply get improvements done. They choose to improve their neighborhoods by exiting the public services and adopting self-help solutions. In Nasr City District, Al-Waha and Al-Suwaisri residents set up gates and private security guards at the entrances of their neighborhoods. Sarayat Maadi and Al-Waha residents managed to fund the pavement, plantation, and tiling of multiple streets in their neighborhoods. In between, there are groups who compromise between self-help solutions and claim-making ones to widen their chances of success, such as groups from Zamalek, Maadi, and Heliopolis. Concerning the level of collaboration with authorities, the dominant levels are networking and coordinations. These are usually to get permits and avoid security issues. In many cases, networking and coordination are established through individual connections and informal channels of communication. Cooperation rarely exists. Meanwhile, the groups who choose to disconnect from the local officials might be discouraged due to previous failed experiences of connection. Official recognition legitimizes the group activities and facilitates their collaboration with other actors. Ideally, it is gained by the resident groups through formalization. However, formalization comes with organization responsibilities and state security control. So while there are legally formalized groups in Cairo, others choose to gain recognition through informal ways, such as the number of online followers and shares, or the members' personal connections. Such ways can provide a certain level of recognition to the groups without formalization. Concerning confrontation with authorities, the high forms of voice expression such as protest are recently avoided by the active groups, whether they achieve their goal or not. Instead, they usually adopt non-face-to-face tactics, such as online and media campaigns. These tactics might be to cope with the absence of local popular councils, the presence of centralized governance system, and the state's high alert against protest. Meanwhile, clashing actions such as lawsuits were noticed as an option among well-established groups as in Maadi and Zamalek. In a holistic view, we can notice the following tendencies. The formally recognized groups tend to adopt either self-help solutions or combine them with voice ones. To achieve this, they coordinate with local officials and depend on the members' connections. These connections might empower them to adopt high level of confrontation with local authorities in some cases. Meanwhile, the right-based groups who adopt voice solutions seem to avoid face-to-face confrontations with local officials. This might be a tactic to maintain their existence, although being legally informal. In a way, right-based groups tend to be discreet by combining between low levels of confrontation and primary levels of collaboration with local authorities. By reflecting on the tactics and solutions presented here, do you notice similar tactics adopted by active resident groups in your city? The influence of the active resident groups seems to be local and directed towards urban improvement. Having said that, to what extent you think these groups could collectively empower the culture of residents' engagement in local governance among the residents and local officials? Finally, the idea of active residents who self-provide can be very attractive. However, to what extent such solutions can empower residents' engagement without over-responsibilizing them, especially in contexts having a wide gap between the expected quality of life in the neighborhoods and the existing urban deterioration. Thank you for listening.